That night started like any other normal night in that house. Nothing felt different. Nothing warned me. I was walking past the living room, my phone in my hand, tired and distracted, when I heard my stepfather's voice. I didn't stop at first because I had trained myself for years to ignore him, but then he said my name, quietly and carefully, and my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I slowed down, then stopped completely, standing just behind the wall where he couldn't see me. I wasn't trying to listen. I swear I wasn't. But when someone says your name in a tone that sounds controlled and secretive, you don't just walk away. You stay, you listen, and that's exactly what I did. He was on the phone with someone. I couldn't hear the other voice clearly, but his words were enough. He talked about papers, about timing, about making sure things went smoothly. The calmness in his voice scared me more than anger ever could. This wasn't frustration. This was planning. Then he said something that made my chest tighten instantly. He said I didn't know anything yet and that it was better that way. That sentence froze me completely. My heart started beating so loud I thought he might hear it. I pressed my back against the wall, barely breathing, realizing this conversation was never meant for me to hear. Whatever he was talking about involved me directly, and it wasn't something good. I stood there longer than I should have, listening as he explained things like I was an object, not a person, like my future was something he could arrange quietly without my consent. When the call ended, I slowly stepped away and went back to my room, closing the door carefully. I sat on my bed for a long time, staring at nothing, replaying his voice again and again in my head. That night, sleep never came. Every sound in the house felt louder. Every movement felt suspicious. My mind kept asking the same question again and again. What exactly was he planning for me? As I lay there awake, memories from the past started connecting in ways they never had before. I thought about how he always controlled money and documents, how he avoided talking about my real father, how he reminded me constantly that I wasn't his responsibility. I remembered how my mother always stayed quiet when things felt unfair, how she avoided conflict and never stood up for me. I had grown up believing that staying silent was the safest way to survive in that house. That night changed that belief. Silence didn't feel safe anymore. It felt dangerous. By morning, I had already made a decision. I wouldn't confront him. I wouldn't panic. If there was a plan, I needed to understand it completely before letting anyone know I was aware of it. Fear makes people careless, and carelessness would only help him, not me. After that night, I didn't wake up scared. I woke up alert. There's a difference. Fear makes you weak. Awareness makes you sharp. And I needed to be sharp, because the moment I let anything show on my face, everything would be over. So I did the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. I acted normal. I spoke when spoken to. I smiled when expected. I followed the same routine I always had, even though inside me, something had permanently shifted. Every sound in the house now felt intentional. Every word felt measured. I wasn't just living there anymore. I was observing. I noticed how my stepfather watched me more closely than before, like he was checking whether something had changed. I noticed how conversations stopped when I entered a room and restarted the moment I left. None of this was loud. None of it was obvious. But once you know what to look for, silence becomes very clear. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. How long has this been going on? That question haunted me. I replayed the conversation I had overheard again and again, trying to remember every detail, the tone, the pauses, the confidence. What scared me most wasn't what he said. It was how sure he sounded. People don't speak like that unless they've already thought everything through. That's when I realized something else. I wasn't dealing with a sudden decision. I was dealing with a long-term plan. And I was late to it. During those days, I tested something quietly. I asked harmless questions about old documents, about my father, about things that should have been simple to answer. Each question made the air heavier. Each answer felt carefully edited. That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't confused. They weren't unprepared. They were hiding. At night, I lay awake listening to the house breathe. Footsteps, doors, whispers behind walls. I started keeping my phone with me at all times, not because I wanted proof yet, but because I needed control over something. When everything around you feels planned, small control feels like survival. I also started paying attention to timing. Who left the house first? Who stayed late? Who handled mail? Who answered the phone? Patterns appeared quickly once I started looking for them, and those patterns all pointed to one truth. I was being managed. That realization hurt more than fear ever could. What made it worse was my mother's silence. I watched her closely, searching for signs, guilt, hesitation, regret. Sometimes I caught it in her eyes. Other times she avoided me completely. It became clear that she knew more than she was willing to admit, and that knowledge built a wall between us that I didn't know how to break. But I couldn't afford emotional decisions anymore. I told myself something important during those days. Do not rush. Rushing would expose me. Acting too early would make me predictable. If there was one advantage I had left, it was that they still believed I knew nothing. So I let them keep believing it. The days that followed felt strange, like I was living two lives at the same time. On the outside, everything looked normal. I ate breakfast, answered politely, and acted like nothing had changed. On the inside, I was watching everything carefully. Every reaction, every word, every moment of silence meant something now. I started noticing things I had ignored for years. How uncomfortable my stepfather became whenever legal matters came up. How quickly he changed the topic if my father's name was mentioned. How my mother avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions about the past. It felt like pieces of a puzzle finally coming together, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. One afternoon, when the house was empty, I started searching. I didn't rush. I didn't throw things around. I moved carefully, opening drawers, checking folders, looking where no one expected me to look. In the storage room, behind old boxes and forgotten items, I found a small metal case. It wasn't locked. It didn't need to be. No one ever thought I'd look for it. Inside were documents that made my hands shake as I read them. My name was there. My father's name was there. Property records, legal papers, details about assets I had never been told about. Everything suddenly made sense. My stepfather wasn't planning something sudden or emotional. He was planning to slowly remove me from everything that legally belonged to me. Push me out quietly, make it look clean and simple. No noise, no resistance. I sat on the floor holding those papers, feeling a mix of shock and anger that I had never felt before. This wasn't just betrayal. This was control. He didn't see me as a person. He saw me as an obstacle. That was the moment I stopped feeling scared and started feeling focused. I didn't tell anyone right away. I copied documents. I took photos. I noted dates and details. I paid attention to conversations and patterns. I let him believe I was still unaware. I let him think his plan was working. When he started acting kinder, when he suggested I should move on and start my life somewhere else, I agreed without hesitation. That agreement made him nervous, and I could see it in his eyes. People get uncomfortable when the person they're trying to control suddenly stops resisting. I also reached out to someone from my father's past, someone my stepfather never thought could become a problem. When I showed him the documents, he confirmed what I already knew. None of this was meant to be taken from me. That confirmation gave me strength I didn't know I had. Finding the documents didn't break me. What broke me was understanding what they meant. When I read my name on those papers, next to things that were never discussed with me, something inside me shut down emotionally. Not in a dramatic way, in a cold, quiet way. That was the moment I stopped seeing myself as part of a family and started seeing myself as a problem they were trying to solve. That shift changed everything. I stopped reacting emotionally to anything they said. When my stepfather started acting kinder, I didn't feel relief. I felt confirmation. When he suggested I think about my future elsewhere, I didn't feel panic. I felt clarity. This wasn't advice, it was positioning. They were preparing the ground. I began organizing everything I had found: documents, dates, conversations, inconsistencies. Not obsessively, systematically. I treated it like something professional because emotions make mistakes, and I couldn't afford one. At the same time, I started planning my own exit, not physically, but strategically. Who would I talk to first? Who could confirm what I already suspected? Who had nothing to gain from lying? Every move had to reduce risk, not increase it. There was one moment that sealed my resolve completely. My stepfather spoke about my future one evening like it was already decided, not as a suggestion, as a conclusion, and he did it in front of my mother, who said nothing. That silence told me everything. I realized then that waiting for honesty from them was pointless. Whatever was coming next would not involve my consent, and that meant I had already waited long enough. From that moment on, I stopped seeing this as a personal betrayal and started seeing it as a situation I needed to survive intelligently. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger would have slowed me down. I was focused. I reached out quietly, cautiously, and only when I was sure I wouldn't be traced back. Each conversation confirmed what I feared and strengthened what I knew. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overreacting. This wasn't normal. And once I accepted that, something else happened. I stopped feeling powerless. Power doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like letting someone believe they're in control while you're quietly removing their advantage. That's what I was doing, step by step. By the time they started acting confident, I had already moved past fear. I knew the truth. I knew my position. And most importantly, I knew that whatever happened next would not catch me unprepared. They thought they were ahead. They weren't. The end didn't come with shouting or chaos. It came quietly, just like his plan had been. The difference was that this time, I wasn't silent. Everything was presented clearly in front of the right people. Documents were placed on the table. Timelines were explained. Facts spoke for themselves. My stepfather tried to stay calm, but his confidence was gone. He didn't deny much because denial doesn't work when truth is organized. He realized too late that the silence he mistook for weakness was actually preparation. My mother cried, not because I had been hurt, but because her silence had finally caught up with her. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking to survive. I wasn't invisible. I walked away from that house without shouting, without revenge-driven destruction, without becoming what they expected me to be. I walked away with control over my own life, and that was something no one could take from me again. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly from the people you trust the most. And sometimes the moment that freezes you is the moment that saves you, because it forces you to wake up, prepare, and choose yourself. Silence isn't weakness if you know how to use it, and truth, when used wisely, is stronger than any plan made against you.